work right here and right there. That's my 2 periods of work. So right now, this particular log at this particular part of the day, I'm going to be dealing with these hours that are here. My 2 periods of rest are this 2 hours here and this 2 hours here. Now, this method of
8 hours there, right?
this 8 hours here, right? You got 8 here and 2 here, which should give you 10 hours.
Right.
Okay. Now, this particular method, just so you can kind of remember it and has a nickname, it was always called leapfrogging. We would leapfrog from one lily pad to the next all day long. You literally could do this across the country, because as long as you kept in line with the hours, you could do this all the way across the country and all the way back without ever taking the 34-hour. Okay, so it was a very useful way for a solo driver to be able to keep the truck moving, a much longer period of time. Years ago, before any of this, okay, we were able to do 5 and 5s. We would drive 5 and sleep 5, drive 5 and sleep 5, and that's when your break was 8 hours, not 10. Okay, so there was a lot of things that we were able to do back in the 80s and the 90s that you certainly lost when we got into the 2000s. So this is currently a legal log up until now. My question will be to you, considering the amount of hours we have here and the amount of hours we have here, how many hours can I drive? That's where the question always comes in at. So sit and figure the hours out.
I think it was 15. So that's 6.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Let's ask the questions. Did I break the 14-hour rule at any point in here?
no.
Okay, so we're good on the 14. Did I break the 11?
No.
No. So I now know I have a legal log, okay, because this equals 10. So we're good. My sins are going to be forgiven at a certain point. So if I didn't break the 14 and I didn't break the 11, that means that I will, after I get done my 8 hour of rest in the sleeper berth, at this point, I will have a certain amount of hours
7.
that I'm able to use.
7.
Okay, and where'd you come up with 7?
What is this, 4 in here?
Mm-hmm. That should be 4 hours.
4 minus 11 is 7, because the other part got canceled out with your rest.
Right, it got forgiven.
Because you did it
Okay,
again.
right, because it literally got forgiven at that point, and that's great. Okay, because what happens is that even though everything in here is included in the 14-hour day, okay, and I have to include it because this and this, okay, is considered a legal rest break. That means that everything from the end of the first rest period gets forgiven. But I still got to deal with this. Okay, that still has to.
Yeah, that's 4 hours. So
Right. I still have to deal with this. So on the other side of that, okay, how many hours can I drive? 7 hours. Okay, so I legitimately could drive another 7 hours here. That's pretty cool, right?
Just to throw some.
Sure. No, go ahead.
The 30-minute break.
Mhm.
Well, I'll save that for later because
Well, the 30-minute
I want to
break.
go on the new.
Right, because under the old system,
Yeah, you gotta
okay,
get up.
I would have
Take a
had
break.
to have calculated from 3 o'clock on. So at 11 o'clock in the morning, I would have had to have done something other than line 3, okay? And it would have had to have been on line 1 under the old system. So at right here, where I was driving, and you can see why now drivers got so pissed off at this. I'm running. And I know where I'm going, I know where I'm delivering, but I got to stop halfway through. So at 11 o'clock, right there is where I got to go up on the off-duty line and take a 30-minute break. My favorite talk show's on. I'm just steaming, and all of a sudden, boom! Now I got to stop for 30 minutes, and it's got to be off-duty. I can't even use it. Okay, so that was under the old system. The new system, same scenario. We could still do this if we wanted to, okay? But under this system, right, we would not have had to take the 30-minute break. That's why even under the new system, there are going to be drivers that run the road that will never take a 30-minute break because it can be included in here.
Now with my 7-hour drive, I still haven't reached 8.
No, we still haven't reached 8.
Yeah.
You know, and the likeliness of splitting sleeper
That
berth.
adds 30 minutes to my 70 hours every 5 days. Yeah, 6 days, 7 days.
Yeah, exactly.
So That's 3.5 hours.
Yeah. So you really are able to utilize this, the split sleeper berth, to your advantage as long as you know how to run it. Now the problem is in the E-Log world, the E-Log is keeping this, so it understands. So it's going to take it to the very minute, okay, of, you know, it's not like you're going to be able to stretch it out a little bit or not take enough time and just put it in there, write it in. It's going to record it as soon as the truck starts to move. So you just got to be careful of how you do this. Now, the only thing that's going to really change on this under the new hours of service rules is the fact that instead of an 8 or 2 and an 8, or an 8 and a 2, because the 8 could have been first and then take the 2 later, okay? And then in that particular case, wherever this period fell, like if it was over here further, wherever that period fell, I'd still have to use that in the next calculation, of which would still be 7 hours. You understand that? I could take these 2 periods and flip them and still come up with the same calculation. The calculation would be no different, okay?
7 hours.
It'd still be 7 hours, okay? So the new hours of service rules gives you a little bit more flexibility in the fact that now you can use 7 and 3 and 8 and 2. So I can still use 8 and 2 or 2 and 8 or 3 and 7 and 7 and 3. So I have an additional 2 more things that are options to me as far as recording the hours. Where the difference is, where you're going to make up your time, is that the entire calculation gets pulled out. So now this first period is not your 14, which is excellent for calculation sake.
It's not in your
I don't know if the bureaucrats really figured this one out, but this really stretches your day, okay? Because if, let's say I use a 7 and 3 to be legal, okay? And like I said, I've worked this on paper. This is beautiful, okay? This is how this works out is really perfect. If I take a 3-hour period of time and put it I can put it any place. It does, you know, there's no law that says I have to take the first segment or the smallest segment as long as it's 2, and I have to put it between either lines 1 or line 2 or a combination thereof.
Minimum of 2.
Minimum of 2, okay? But if you're doing the 7 and 3 calculation, then quite obviously then it has to be 3 and 7, okay? So let's say if I'm going to do the 3 split now, I'm going to take this period right here and make it 3 hours, which means that this one only has to be 7. In the 14-hour calculation, my day started here and it went to here so far, okay? But what's going to happen is I only now am going to be responsible for what was before the 3, what was immediately after the 3, up to the beginning of the 7. That other 3 hours that I did resting comes out of the calculation. So now my 14-hour day is extended by how many hours? 3.
Because you're not counting that 4 hours.
Because I don't have to count this now. It's taken out. It vaporizes just like this.
And it's not 2 right now. His example is
It's 3.
calling it 3.
Okay? But even if I use this, it doesn't matter. If I use a 2 and 8, this 2 comes out of the calculation. I only have to count the amount of hours I actually worked, okay, under the new split, which means that from 3 to 6:45 and from 8:45 to 12:45. That's the only hours I need to count down as far as my 14-hour calculation. That works, right? Okay, makes more sense actually when you think about it. If I'm resting, rest is rest. Okay, why would you keep it as part of the 14-hour calculation if I'm resting? Okay, because it's still my responsibility what I do with it. But if it's in rest, then I should be able to take it as rest. So, and if you force me to take a 10-hour break, you're pulling that whole thing out for rest. Well, why not if I do a 2 and 8 or a 7 and 3? Why don't you pull that whole thing out? Okay, again, the bureaucrats didn't really think about this, all right, because they didn't realize that when they did this, extends the driver's day. That's the last thing they wanted to do. That's why I'm going to tell you right now, this is coming out next year.
Use it while you can.
I know how they think. Okay, this rule will be changed next year. Okay,
So you're adding another 3 hours in.
absolutely.
In this case,
In this case, I'm adding another 2 hours.
right, with the way it is illustrated,
Yeah,
but
This one, yeah.
but if you did 3 and 7, Which that one says 2 and 8.
Not only did I increase this by 3, but I lessened this by 1. So you're always, if you do a 7 and 3 split, you will always be increasing your day by 3 hours.
That's where I want to manage my time once I arrive to a warehouse better.
Right, because if you think about it, even in this situation where it's a 2 and 8, if I took
That's the way I
this
would use it,
and
too.
came down here,
7.
okay,
No, 2.
would it really have any
your day
bearing
longer.
on what I did? Okay.
And start your 3 hours.
Sure it would,
'cause you
absolutely would. Because
You're gonna be
in
there.
this particular instance, I'm trying to salvage whatever I can of my 70,
Yeah.
okay? But it doesn't do anything on my 14. Under the new rules, I would never want to come down here because now I can't do a damn thing about it unless I do put it in either line 1 or line 2. So you better believe that when I get to a shipper or a receiver, my ass is going right in the sleeper berth or right on
Because
that
that's
off
putting
the-
money,
That's
that's
where-
putting hours in your
That's
pocket.
putting hours in your pocket for later on in the week.
Yeah, that's where I want to figure out, like, check in with security, check in with the whoever, receiver,
Right.
shipper in the office, and then they tell me,
If you tell me, driver, pull over here and wait for a door, or a lot of these places have holding lots. Like
Yeah.
if you go to Costco Monroe Township up in North Jersey, if you hit their parking lot, right off on the right-hand side, there's a holding lot. And that's where they put all the trucks over to there. You have a little pager that goes off, and as soon as the pager goes off, it has your door number on it, and shoom, over the door you go.
So what if you go into your sleeper berth for 2 hours and you get a page in an hour?
But if you get a page in an hour, there's not much you can do about it. Okay? It is what it is. So I normally try